Hello everyone, my name is Matthew, and on behalf of the organisers, Oliver Kinross, welcome to the latest Festival of BIM and Digital Construction webinar. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank all of our sponsors, but with special mention of Newformer, our sponsor for today's session. Today will feature a panel discussion on how to unite your project information. There will be plenty of time for Q&A, so also take the opportunity to submit your questions in the questions box on your screen for the speakers to answer. I'd now like to pass over to Zach, Erik, Bill, and James for the panel discussion.
Thank you, Matthew. I'm just going to share my slides. Okay, good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar, and today we're going to be discussing how to unite your project information. My name is James Cook, and I'm Business Solutions Consultant for Newformer.
You want me to introduce it?
Yeah, sorry, Erik.
Sorry,
yeah.
Thanks, James. I'm Erik. I'm the Project Delivery Manager at Hawkins Brown, an architectural practice, about 280, been around for about 30 years. And I'll hand over to Bill, as we know he's coming.
Bill, you want to introduce yourself? I think Bill lost audio. All right. Well, while we're waiting for Bill, I'm Zach Ruck, a strategic account manager with Newformer. I've been in the industry since 94, 95-ish. I've been with Newformer since 2008, so been around for quite some time and love eat, live, and sleep the AE world. And Bill, have you gotten your audio back?
Okay, so the next slide, Bill was going to introduce Clark Nexsen. I'll give Bill a second or two. In the meantime, should we jump on to Hawkins Brown, if that's okay, Erik?
Yes, if you like. Yeah, so Hawkins Brown, we are architectural practice, multidisciplinary practice. We've been established since 1988. Work on a variety of sectors. We've got about 280 people, and we have offices in London, Manchester, Edinburgh, and LA.
Perfect. And Bill, are you in the room now? Okay. Okay, so in that case, I'll just continue for the webinar. Is Bill there now? Sorry.
Yeah, I'm back.
Oh, all right,
perfect
timing.
I was having some audio technical problems. Okay, so I guess it's my turn to talk a little bit about our firm.
Yes,
We're
please.
a multidiscipline A&E firm, full service, centered on the East Coast of the US. We do work in a bunch of different practice areas, higher ed, DoD, federal, a little bit of commercial stuff, transportation, a lot of bridge work. Pretty much anything you name it, we do it.
Like that, okay. So with today's subject about uniting your data, as with any question, before you work through the how, you need to firstly understand the why. And in this case, why you need to unite your product information. Now, in our discussion today of how we unite our data, we want to open up discussion with why you should. And the answer is simple. We're creating more data than ever, and subsequently, it's only projected to continually grow. When you think about the fact that 90% of all data created in the last 2 years, it makes you wonder what activities we're doing every single day to contribute to this extraordinary number. Now, on top of that, 2.5 quintillion bytes, and that's 2.5 quintillion bytes of data is generated every single day. And just to put that number in perspective, if you place 2.5 quintillion pennies and they were laid out, just say on our planet, it would cover the Earth 5 times over. And that's quite a significant amount of data. So what contributes as a piece of data being created? This can be anything from a simple Google search to sharing a post on social media, even making a purchase online. It could be simply creating a document or even just sending a chat or a message. And all of this is creating data. As we discussed in data communication, did you know in fact that 306 billion emails are sent and received every single day worldwide? And no wonder we have a hard time finding the amount of data that we're producing. The point is that we're creating so much data, especially as it is potentially making a major impact on our day-to-day lives, whether that's through a general purchase, or it could even be us using data in our daily jobs. The problem is that there is a growing gap between data growth and data value. And when you think about some companies such as Amazon, for instance, they use our information for monetization purposes. They provide personalized product recommendations based on our previous transactions and potentially increasing the likelihood that we will potentially purchase similar products again. But for the design and construction industry, however, data is used very differently. And while it's not for monetization purposes, information is the lifeblood of construction projects. And without it today, your projects wouldn't be sustainable. Yet there are other challenges in the construction industry when it comes to data. And the fact that 90% of data is unstructured and 96% of data goes unused, this leaves much to the imagination of the opportunities it could provide to project teams. Now, going back to why you need your project information, is that data provides concrete answers to current and even future challenges that can point you towards the point of growth and success. Now, as you can see with the quote at the top here from Kinsey and Company, they summarized the challenge pretty well, saying that gaps in digital collaboration within the AEC space are one of the sole reasons why data silos exist today. And the problem is that when it comes to product information and also information management, traditionally these silos prevented project teams from providing critical context to the project by not relating important information to each other. Now, since project data is often siloed and inaccessible for long periods of time, our ability to leverage this data becomes far less, and the value itself decreases with that. And the consequences are real. Nuforma produced a global state of technology executive report, and this revealed that project teams often struggle with, and as you can see on the slide here, they struggle with administrative tasks, they struggle with to maintain audit trails, sharing files, and even productivity work in the field. Now, the common denominator is that the information is unstructured, forcing people to often do manual, time-consuming tasks or spending time searching for information. And on top of that, there is a real risk to having this information for a number of reasons.
So now that we kind of understand a bit more about the data and why it's playing such a pivotal role in our day-to-day lives. There's so much raw data everywhere. There's lots of challenges that are introduced there. So what we wanted to do is kind of take a moment now and switch over and get some understanding from Bill and Erik's perspectives of how all this information kind of affects their lives and affects their firms. One of the biggies, next slide please, is really, kind of before 2020, everything has just silos. There's silos of information all over the place, and it's just getting worse. It used to be just email or your T drives or, a few other spots, but now we have, just a myriad of products that are coming out, and information is everywhere, whether it's on your servers, whether it's in the cloud, a number of different cloud sites, it's on your phone, it's on your laptop, who knows where data could be. So we wanted to bring in Bill and Erik to kind of talk a little bit about some of the challenges that they've experienced prior to using Nuforma. So, Bill and Erik, if you can think back, you've both been customers for a while, what were some of the biggest challenges and some of the biggest issues that you all experienced, before you had, information management system in place?
Well, for us, I think our biggest challenge started with emails. And we've been with Nuforma, had a PIM system for a long time, and so we hadn't been hadn't had a company-wide email system for too long, and even at that point, lots of things were still typed and written and mailed and faxed and things like that. But as email became more popular, more and more of the exchange of information or instructions or confirmations or permissions and things like that were done by email. What we found is that we couldn't keep track of it, and people would come and go on the project, things would change on the client side or the contractor side, and it was we were struggling. We were spending lots and lots of time trying to scour through individuals' emails to try to find this information. And so that was when we really realized that we needed to be able to manage that information and be able to search it and be able to locate it quickly, because it was really key to being able to answer those questions and respond to those issues.
Yeah, and for us, it was similar to, as Bill said, but also the fact of the way that our projects work. I mean, architectural projects are naturally siloed because each project is often a unique standalone piece of work. So we had to consider the fact that as we grew as a practice, we needed to have standardization that could also meet with the needs of each individual project. So putting in an information management system to be able to build a framework to contain those individual silos in a standardized way was a big driver for us to provide and build the system that we do have. Okay,
and then kind of as we switch, there was a little bit of this year's been we'll say been a bit different, been a challenge for everybody. So thinking about current working environments, is there really anything that jumps out with the new complexities? And there's a lot more challenges and hoops to jump through, but it's really the same data, the same. At the end of the day, we still have to deliver the same projects that we have been. So with the new complexities that's going on, is there any new challenges that have come up? Anything that's changed this year that you found some great, that really having a PIM system in place has really helped separate your firms or really help you stay ahead of everything?
You rely on it even more than you used to. You can't get up and walk over and ask somebody a question, and you can't necessarily count on them being at their work from home desk when you need to find them and get an answer to a question. And so having that information in a location where you can easily find it is it really is invaluable at times. Just having that organization and the information managed in a way that you can grab it, it's invaluable.
Yeah, I agree. And, as well as the fact that there is standardization across projects, it means that because people are now working individually, really, although they're within their teams, everyone's working at home. So having a standard location and a standard approach across various systems, it means that the transfer of information throughout project to project and person to person is able to be managed in a much more efficient way. And also the fact of having spent time in the past getting knowledge out of people and putting it in a central location, it's been a great asset to be able to point people to a standard location for the information and how to on project information and general working day-to-day stuff. So it's been, obviously COVID is a great antagonizer of systems. So it's been good to see it stress tested, and the time you've spent in the past kind of mitigating risks has obviously paid off for many people this year because of the fact that COVID has brought those risks to the forefront.
Yeah, and although we're planning to welcome people back to the office, hopefully in the very near future, the reality is that this flexible work location, flexible work environment is here to stay. So the idea that we're gonna, on some date in the future, have everybody back in the office every day and it'll go back to the way it was, I think we're kidding ourselves. We think that's going to happen. And so I think these management systems that we have that we've been relying on now or for the past few months, they're going to be important going forward just as much.
And that brings up kind of a really interesting point that I wanted to ask you, Bill. I know, Clark Nexsen's had a couple of different information systems in place, and this is kind of your, Clark Nexsen's second time around with Newforma. What's kind of made it different this time? What's made it, and we've talked in the past, and you've said, it's a bit more successful now. And I just was curious, kind of what was your take on why, the success you're seeing now?
Well, I think, we're like many firms. You get sold a piece of software and you think, oh, well, this software solves my problems, because that's the way it gets sold to you. And you think you just deploy it to your user base, and you have maybe a 1 hour training session for everybody, and then that's the end. And everybody's using it, everybody's doing well on it. But the reality is that for us, it just didn't work out that way, and we were really struggling with low user adoption. And so, when we came back into Newforma on this platform, we committed to having someone who's our champion for the software, and could regularly, do training for new employees, but also be there as a resource for existing employees when they found a need to use some new functional area, or they were having a problem with something that just said general questions, or when there were new features in the software that were being released. You've got to educate people on these new features if you want them to take advantage of them and use them. So that's been a key for us, is having someone who could be sort of that internal champion for the software. And it's dedicated. This is a primary part of her job. Is to be the leader on this software.
And it's also having worked with her, it's also what's nice is that it's really a dual part role. She knows the software in and out, but also knows the workflows of the industry and Clark Nexsen's workflow. So it really does play so well together.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Because I think as Erik was saying, you want some standardization in your workflows, and so the software is just a part of that. But if you're going to have the software, you need to sort of adapt your normal workflows around the software so that it becomes a part of the process. And she's been really key to doing that.
I was going to ask Erik, Hawkins Brown, I know you do internal audits. Has that process become a lot more challenging, or is it easier?
Yes and no. I mean, we do carry out internal audits on throughout the project life. We will audit projects to make sure that they are basically function as they should be, and so we can steer them. And the checking of Newforma use and such is part of that audit. And it's also because different users use the systems in different ways. So you can't just assume that everyone is going to be using it in the way you assume, because they may not be doing it in that way. Now, as far as carrying out audits and the information kind of checks that we do, it's not been more difficult, because essentially rather than gathering around the sofa or the screen, we're just now setting up a Teams meeting and going and doing it. And also the function of being able to share screen, as I've found, has been a lot easier, because you can display it on someone's screen or both have the mouse and click around to do that. So yeah, I think for training and for general kind of auditing purposes, it's been fairly smooth as a transfer.
Yeah, it's fun, isn't it? The way we're talking now is exactly how our working methods are today, currently.
Yeah, and it's going to be a hybrid going forward. I don't think it will go back to everyone in the studio and then going off to meet one another. I think it's definitely going to be a hybrid in the future, which just means you're going to have to anticipate what the system needs to accommodate future use, because the users are going to do things in different ways. So we need to consider, and a bit of future proofing to think about what is the hybrid method going to be, and how can we anticipate any kind of problems that may occur as part of that.
And then that's kind of a good lead in to really the next part, is really looking at kind of growth and success over the long-term picture. It's have you seen how these challenges are they a number of firms are kind of figuring out the waters. It's a new age, so are these challenges kind of leading to some growth and success? Have you found ways of kind of getting past this and actually using it to your advantage?
Yeah, I think we certainly have. A big part of my job is leading continuous improvement in the firm, and so the ability to track and measure our responsiveness or our follow through on our commitments is important, and it's important to the people that we work with, our clients that are hiring us. Even our construction partners, so we might be doing design build, or even when it's design bid build, and they're just having to bid the project. Our ability to be reliable and dependable to our partners out there is really important. So keeping our fingers on the pulse of where things stand in a project is important day to day, but also being able to look at that retrospectively and look for opportunities for improvement, or where were those problems. Because the more dependable we are, the more likely our client is to come back to us for the next project. And I think we've seen that. That's the kind of feedback we get from our clients, is that they know that they can count on us to deliver. And this is one of the things that helps us to do that, because things don't get lost. It's not buried in somebody's email inbox, or it's not a file stored on their computer or in some mysterious location on the network. Somebody else can stand in for that person if needed, but also from a management perspective, we can keep tabs on those things, so we can make sure that things aren't falling through the cracks, so we're not dropping the ball.
Yeah, and likewise, thus, I mean, the strength of having a good information management system in place is to enable access to the records that are generated on a project. Because, as Bill said, being able to find things and access them and mitigate that risk is a big part of growth, and being able to put your hands on what you need when you need it, and to also know that it should have been created at a certain time in the project, because throughout the project life, there are key activities that have to happen. And having a system that will enable you to know if they've been created or not, which is what we do with our audits, so we can see at certain points if things have been created in the right way. You can both steer the projects in a controlled manner, and that does allow you to eliminate waste on the projects, and also to mitigate any risks and anticipate any potential risks come up, which obviously with the world situation, no one quite knows what's going to happen for the next 6 months or so. So it's being able to provide some stability and steering through standardized processes, and enabling access, because that is really the key part of it, is to allow people to find what they need when they need it with as easy a way as possible.
And in our role as the designers on projects, let's be honest, there are many cases where we're sort of managing the rest of the team. And I think we've all had the experiences where someone said that we never sent it to them, or they never told us this, or they never told us that. And we can put our fingers right on that. We know we sent it to them. We know they downloaded the file. We know they did tell us to do something. We know we did tell them to do something, and we know exactly when we did it. And that just makes us more dependable and reliable in our client's eye, even when it's the client who's saying, I didn't tell you to do that.
I had many years ago a large project we were working on, big AE firm. The hole to the building was actually 18 feet to the north, and surveyors trying to put in mark for all the footings. Hey, the hole's in the wrong spot. So it cost the client almost $1 million to have just 18 feet of bedrock blasted out so they could get it in the right place. And it turned out the contractor downloaded the wrong set of plans off of the FTP site and just steamrolled, and there was no proof of when, what. It was just a nightmare trying to track where all that information was and who did what. It took us months to figure out who all the fingers were pointing to.
Yeah.
And finally,
precisely. I mean, you need access. Yeah, that's what I mean. You need access to the records, because that's when it comes up. And it may be something that people overlook. They don't think that it's necessarily something they need, but when you do need it, you realize why you need access to your information and your records, and that they should have been generated in the first place for exactly those scenarios.
Especially for archiving as well. The archiving is overlooked. People just see sometimes this as a way of just dumping data into an archive repository where it should be managed and maintained and put in the appropriate
Yes, it should be. I am trained as an archivist, so a lot of the processes we have come from my training in that, to consider what the final product should be as the end of the project. So you're able to identify what you would want in the archive if you did have a claim, or you did have any need to bring that information out. So there's also the assumption that just having everything is your archive and it'll all be there and accessible, but that's just not the case, because having too much information means it's more difficult to find because it can be an overload. And also, if it's not managed properly in the archive and it's just left as a huge silo, you're back at square one because you've got lots of individual silos, except they're in an archive, or an archive rather than a managed accessible resource.
And it's not just about who's right and who's wrong. You know, it's really about solving the problem as quickly as you can. The more time goes by, the bigger that problem gets. And even when it's your fault and you made the mistake, the quicker you can solve it, the better you're going to look in everybody's eyes, and you keep things moving on the project, which is the overall goal anyway, right?
And kind of, Bill, a question came in from one of the audience. It kind of stemmed off of a statement you had made earlier about, you know, flexible working is kind of here to stay. How do you think, you know, project management software kind of helps, you know, could, you know, kind of change their view, kind of help with these firms moving forward?
Well, I think, you know, just, you know, putting the information at their fingertips, but I think, you know, we're already experiencing you know, situations where, you know, we have employees that used to work maybe standard work hours, but now they have kids at home, and both mom and dad are working, and so mom gets to work in the mornings, dad gets to work in the afternoons, and they're both working in the evenings. But other people on the project team aren't working on it, and we have such interdependencies in the way we work because it's collaborative work. But sometimes when you're working at 9 o'clock at night, because that's when you could work, you can't talk to somebody, you can't ask that question and get a response. And so actually just being able to get into the project record and find out what's going on, what somebody may have said in an email, or what might be included in a document somewhere. Just be able to do that research on your own, because you can't get that answer at that point in time. It's, you know, I think that's going to make us more reliant on these kinds of systems rather than less reliant. And I think, you know, some new changes, in fact, in Nuforma, which sort of automates some of the email filing process, is really helpful, because, you know, you got to capture it in order to be able to search it and share the information.
Very good point. And then Erik, we also had a question. You were talking about, you know, how would you go about persuading some of your colleagues just the benefits of using it? Because there's, you know, still quite a few non-tech savvy, you know, firms and folks out there. So, you know, don't quite understand it and don't think that, you know, how would you go about trying to convince some people about, you know, why you want to use, or how, you know, because you've got such great, you just mentioned the archival procedures and some of the, you know, your background training and how well it leads into, you know, kind of how information management software works. I thought that was a fascinating.
Well, it's in two ways, really. I mean, the first way is to demonstrate the ease and the savings that it makes them in terms of, rather than clicking through folders and trying to remember something somewhere, and, you know, trying to remember, did somebody once tell you something, and searching your emails, is to make it accessible, again, it's access, and to make it easy for people to access. And the second way of kind of persuading about colleagues and benefits is to identify there's different user groups in your place of work, and they're all going to use it in a different way. So you then need to provide the guidance and the support for those individual user groups, so they are then able to access and find out what they're doing, and to make it easy, because it's about put some cost in to make it an easier access and easier process for people at the end. So the benefits is really just going to be show people how much easier it is, and how much more kind of time they'd have free to do the things they need to do, rather than spend fishing around for files they may not be able to use. So it's a case of identifying the user groups, identifying what they need, and then basically selling to them by showing them how easy their life is going to be when they've got this.
I like the idea of the extension of that as well, because I know Hawkins Brown as well, you also do, you do an overview programs after they've completed. So you do like an aftercare, or you review projects and lessons learned after they've completed.
Yeah, projects have a post-completion review, where a group of people within the practice will talk to the architects and find out what happened, and then we'll be able to review the processes and continually have lessons learned. So it'll be process lessons learned, as well as maybe CPDs and sharing information, as well as nice pieces of drawings and information which could be shared amongst practice and become standard packages. So yeah, I mean, looking after the project, no, I'd say towards the end of the project life, I'll rephrase that, so that you can learn your lessons from the projects you've done, so you don't keep making the same mistakes, because another large part of information management is to learn from your mistakes, build them into the process, and to not waste time by endlessly redrawing and redoing the same mistakes over and over again, by just learn from what you're doing and build on the process. And it is that continuous improvement, which Bill said earlier, that's a big driver behind this, because it's the marginal gains that make turn into major wins, really.
And
And
people
that
are going to be laggards, though, right? I mean, they're just going to resist and resist. And I know that's been, I've experienced that with some people, and they really don't come over to the to see the light until it solves their problem. They see that they've got to actually see it in action. You can't, they're slow to pick up, and they're sort of they're not going to jump on board until it's proven to them that it's actually worth their time to learn how to use. That's usually a small minority of the staff, but they are out there. And, sometimes you have to have some patience with them, and just keep sort of beating the drum that there's value here. And
yeah, I mean, eventually the benefits will out to people, to the resistance. They were eventually, when they find that they need to find something and it's really easy for them to do it, that's when the light dawns and they begin to buy into it in a much more way. But it's a constant process, and this is what I said earlier about identifying different groups of people and different users and the different approaches that they may have, so you can work on them individually, really.
That's really a great point, Eric. It's, we, as an industry, we design change. We don't like it, but we design it. I always thought it was fascinating. Back in my net admin days, we had a group of electrical engineers. We couldn't get them off of AutoCAD 11. No matter how far the rest of the firm progressed, they had one Lisp routine, and we just couldn't get them off. Finally, had to show benefits, show that, really had to sell them on, hey, you got to join the rest of the company on AutoCAD 14 in 2000. But it's amazing how you just get these, I love that term, laggards, just can't get them up. So you just got to sell. It's always fun trying to sell internally on why we need to do some things. And that kind of jumps into the next part is really, we talked a bit about, information, project information, but really what is it? So one of the key things, I'm going to jump to the next slide, James, about project information. And what's pretty exciting is Newforma created this space. You've got all of your projects info, your files, your emails, your, there's information everywhere now. But there's also really workflows. So project management really gets into schedules and your workflows like submittals and RFIs and action items, and there's lots of different pieces. So we kind of brought together these two separate instances, or two separate parts of the company, trying to put it under one umbrella, and really make everybody responsible and everybody stakeholders. And then the beauty here is it's not just within firms like Clark, Nexsen, and others. It's just, okay, how can we expand that and actually create workflows and communications with those outside of your companies? So, just staying transparent. But what we wanted to also chat a bit about is, what are kind of some of the key drivers to bring that information together? So I wanted to just ask, Bill and Eric, you've been through changes. What do you think are, some of the things that really is uniting all this info back into that central location?
So I kind of go back to one of my earlier comments about how long we've been doing this, and we were definitely stuck in paper processes, back at the very beginning, and especially in construction and admin, where we had the project manager would have a box under their desk where they filed all the RFIs and the submittals on a project, and some made it there and some didn't. Some made it there and somebody pulled it out and never put it back. And at some point you're gonna have to go back to that record and find those things. And so, you know, this is kind of like you said, Zach, it's sort of like the confluence of project management and information management. So, you know, we aren't managing the information very well, but we needed to, but the project needed to be managed. So this kind of ties those two things together. So once we get the all the documents and all the information on the project into the system, then it makes it easy for everybody to use. You know, that makes the project manager's life easier. It makes the project team member's life easier because it's all in the same place. There's I steal one of Erik's terms. There's a standard way for it to be organized and a standard process that you're going to follow, and no more boxes under desks and things like that.
Awesome. Erik, anything on your end, on your on the other side of the pond?
Well, I mean, we've, I mean, it makes things easier for people because having a standard process means that they're pretty much doing the same thing every time, and they don't have to relearn. Like, I'm in this project, you know, I'm moving from this project to this project, and it's completely different. So it makes it a streamlined process because people know, oh, okay, I'm moving to this one, but essentially the framework is the same. It's just the detail which they would get a handover on in between there. So that is where the elimination of waste is coming in. And again, it's the risk management of that, because you know, people aren't having to relearn things constantly because it is a standardized framework around the way they do it. So it can give them confidence to know that, you know, oh, I need to know where to find something. This is where it's going to be, regardless of which project I may happen to be working on at the time, because of the fact it's a standard process, you see. And also the suite of guidance and documentation and supporting information to help the users is also there for them to lean on. See, so, you know, there's although it's a process to make the information available for people, the supporting information, I mean, it does pay dividends because it means that they're not having to ask questions because they know where to go to find the answers. And if people can do that, then they're able to do that and get on with their work quite easily without having any kind of wasted time with trying to work out what the answer should be, because if they know where they can find the answer, it makes everybody's life a lot easier.
Yeah, because obviously we've got the Uniforma community, but I know a lot of companies tend to have their own intranet systems, their own internal guidance areas and locations, you know, for upkeeping and maintaining their own internal standards in relation to the product information management solution.
Yeah, we do. We have we've got an intranet, an internal company intranet, and in there was a project delivery area where you can, you know, there's an FAQ about various documentation bits. There's all of the standard documentation that people may need. There's Q&As on there, and there's videos that we made, bespoke videos in the practice for Nuforma use, so that people are able to go in, and particularly new starters, for example, I can go and show them the videos, show them when they are, and then catch up with them later. So they don't need, and particularly with working from home now, it's a lot more difficult because people are working at home. It's not lean over and ask, oh, how do you do this? They can go and look at the video or know where to look for it, and having that central location is definitely an asset that we have.
Yeah, and FAQs are a major benefit, obviously. Okay. So obviously we've covered a lot about, you know, the importance of why, you know, it's important for companies to need to change, and obviously, you know, people do have their own working habits, but if they can work collaboratively in a very similar way, obviously that's very beneficial on projects. Now, I just wanted to know from yourselves, Bill and Erik, what are the key drivers to uniting project information in your businesses?
Erik, you want to take the lead on that one?
It's what I've said already. In fact, it's what it says on screen there. I mean, it is the standardization process. I mean, I think we've kind of given the answers to this already, but, you know, it's only through reiteration that things become lessons. And so, you know, there is the need to drive information, particularly as projects and information. Everything is getting more complicated now. Things are getting bigger, it's getting more complicated, it's getting more fractured. So having a bedrock of standard processes for people to have, which are accessible and easy to understand, even though there may be quite difficult processes behind, as long as the users can understand it in an easy way, then it does do all of these things that are said on the screen. So,
and I know in the UK we tend to follow quite a formal set of standards, because we've got, you know, you think of the PAS 1192 in the UK that's now being used, you know, in areas such as the Middle East, being used in the APAC region, even in China. You may see it slowly materialize in the US. You may see these standards be introduced, but these are all standards in how we name documents, workflows, how we should work collaboratively with other companies who has the design responsibilities. All of these are set out in projects now where previously people may have worked in a very haphazard way, and that is becoming an international standard, in fact. So you may see that coming over to your side of the pond at the US. Yeah.
Yes, and also because international projects are more of a thing. You know, there's more people on projects working in different areas, and so they do need standardization to be able to bring it all together as a central product. Because otherwise everyone's going to be working in a silo. So it does come back to the root problems over and over again, which is why there does need to be consideration of change and progress.
Yeah, and I think that the more you can communicate to people the value in adopting something like this, whether it's the value that's derived to your firm or the value that can be derived by them individually, I think that's one of the big keys. Well, that's the key to any kind of change initiative. But I think that, when people see value to what they're doing or what they may need to do, then they're more likely to do it. Then they think it's just some bureaucratic process you put in place. And I think these kinds of standards can initially appear to be sort of a bureaucratic diktat, if you will, but I think you have to partner that with demonstrating to people the value. Why are you doing this? Why do we need to do this? What value do we derive if we do these things? I think that's really, really important if you want to get widespread user adoption and compliance with processes.
So that actually kind of brings up a really interesting question that came in, Bill and Erik. So one of the questions was, I found in the past it a bit difficult gathering data from projects and companies, mail, spreadsheets, files, to reference them in a consistent way. Do you have any idea or advice to teach the project teams the importance of metadata or following company guidelines to deliver a more consistent way, or do you think it's a lost cause?
Well, I don't know. Maybe folks over in the U.S. are a lost cause. Like to follow standards quite as well as maybe people do in other parts of the world. We're just happy if people can get it into the right project sometimes, and not necessarily the right folder with the right name, and the ability to search the text that's in a document, or search by the name, or the date, or who actually created the document. That's really, really valuable. And I think even if you have standards and you have generally good compliance, I think you still need to be able to search in that way. You need to be able to find stuff in that way, because people make mistakes. They may have the best of intentions, but we all make mistakes, and we put stuff in the wrong place, or we name it the wrong thing, or we transpose numbers and a date or something like that. And so you gotta have that capability.
Yeah, I mean, as James said earlier, we generally wear more standards. No, I'm not going to say so, but there are standards in place that are specified for use on projects. And if it's not the BS or the ISO, sometimes it will often be a management protocol that's provided. So it's just a case of explaining this to people and having someone in-house who is able to read those protocols and then disseminate the information in a more user-friendly manner, because they can be quite thickly written and very, densely, it's just quite complicated wording some of the time. So being able to disseminate that and teach the teams so they're able to then go away and do the work, and also checking in on them, which is part of our auditing process, to check that people are aware of the metadata requirements and of the quality requirements of the business too. Yeah. So as well as the, I think, we have our BSI audits and the 9001 and the quality requirements. So it's just reiterating and reminding people that there are standards to follow, and you do need to do this, and to just spend the time really sitting with people to educate them and to show them why they need to do this. And it does make things easier because, you know, the number is there, so you know what's in it. It's to make things easier to find and easier to access. And yeah, a lot of it is time with people and showing them and demonstrating why this is. And you will get take up as people begin to understand it. You'll get take up from people, and then as you do that, you're building more champions within the practice. So
yeah, and one thing I thought I'd is we have a standard called the ISO 9050. Again, that's for naming standards, but it relates to just your deliverable information that you're going to be sharing with other design consultants. All the other documents that you're going to be producing on a daily basis and sharing, all of those documents are not going to be named in with that standard. So you still would need a search tool to be able to find all of that data within those files even.
Yeah, and emails are just by their nature unstructured.
Yeah,
right. And so, so you get definitely that tool regardless with something like emails.
And I guess we'll take one more question on this before we move on, but actually it kind of relates to something that you were saying, Erik. You know, do your firms require buy-in from everyone in the firm? And what this is kind of the part that I thought kind of related to what you were saying. And what do you do when you find PMs especially aren't using it?
You need buy-in from above because they're your support. They're the ones who can help spread the word and to explain to people why. On the day-to-day users, some people will buy in, some people won't, because people are different, but it's just about demonstrating and teaching and helping them with making their life easier. And if people are especially stubborn about using it, you just have to persevere. Unfortunately, there isn't an easy way of doing it, but you just have to persevere, keep with them and build up the team, because they won't necessarily be working on their own. There will be other people in the team with them. If you can work on those people, then they will also help to convert the stubborn person to the calls. So it's not a lost cause. So it's a case of thinking around the problem sometimes.
Well, we just invest some time in convincing them to go to work for our competitors. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I agree with Erik. I mean, you just have to spend some time. You know, the people who tend to be in the laggard category, they stand out, and so you know who you need to focus on and who you need to reach out to and spend a little extra time with to try to get them on board with the program.
Yeah, and it's making yourself available as well. That's the thing, to not be, it's to make it approachable and be there and to support people. I mean, it is a support function, so it's yeah, that's a big part of it as well, is to just make it approachable and to make it easy for people.
I like that, approachable. I guess go ahead, my friend.
Oh, sorry. So I think that takes us into our next area, isn't it? About the future. What is the future of the industry? Obviously, we've spoken a lot about the present, the past, obviously archiving, but I think moving forward, obviously, I just wanted to get both your opinions, Bill and Erik, on what the future beholds the industry. What, in terms of the way things are moving, what could you foresee?
Wow. Yeah, that's a really tough one.
Yeah.
We could have predicted that we would be where we are today, but you know, I think that to a certain extent, it's hard to predict because a lot of our clients are having a tough time predicting what the future looks like for them. You know, I think if you take one example, if you do a lot of work in higher education, you know, what's the market in higher education going to look like after going through a semester or two of a great degree of remote learning where students aren't on campus? And so is that going to lead to more of that when this COVID thing is over? Is it going to lead to a demand for less classroom space? That's going to be more remote learning, and the projects will be of some other kind of type, you know. And I think that might drive us to have to change and gain some expertise that we don't currently have, because you know our clients' business has changed and we've got to adapt to that. You know, I think we talked a lot already about the differences in what we can expect in the way we do work You know, I think for us as a firm, we can probably see more maybe purposeful project team meetings, maybe centered around particular design issues. If you're familiar with the big room concept from Lean, where you get all the project partners together in the room to tackle an issue, I could see, you know, more of maybe bringing a project team together in a big room with everybody's got their laptops and you're all working on that problem together, and you know, and once you solve that problem, then everybody kind of goes back to doing their thing in the place where they're normally working, either in the office or home or hotel room somewhere. But I think we'll have to probably create these events where we're drawing people together, you know, with a purpose, and it would probably require some intense management and communication and agreement between the project partners and the project team members.
For me, leaving COVID aside, I think the biggest thing is going to be the consideration of the full life of the project, rather than just the active kind of later stages when it's actually being built. You need to have, it's going to be a consideration of when it's established and set up, there's going to be a need, because the projects are getting bigger, they're getting more complicated, the data is getting more kind of intensely connected to itself and to each other, and the models are there, and this will need management through the whole life of the project rather than kind of dropping in halfway through. So you need to consider when you're setting up to the end of it, of what you should be expecting to provide. Exactly. Well, this is the archive. Yeah. This is the archive training me speaking, is that you need to consider the whole life of the project so you can identify what is going to be created at the stages throughout that project, and then the drivers behind that. So it will be things like I said here about common data environment. Generally in the past, they came in later when the contractor came in and they said, we're going to be using this system to upload and download data. That will happen earlier. It's going to happen earlier because of the fact that people are more aware that models are being created, information is being shared, and so it needs to be a controlled process for the whole life of the project. So I think that there needs to be more consideration about the complete project, not just particular stages as standalone pieces of work, but it's the cradle to grave model.
Yeah, and I think we're also seeing our data exists in places outside of our normal network. We're partnering with contractors on design build pursuits, for example, and all of those documents are in Teams, and all the communication is in Teams. You know, there is some email correspondence, but it's not in your traditional network stores. So the ability to sort of capture that into your project information management system is really important as well. And then being able to archive that and pull it into your traditional network storage, where you know you feel like it's more reliable and you can count on it being there and being accurate. And the other thing I see, it's along the lines of the big data, is we were already seeing this over the past couple of years, more and more leveraging of the data that we're creating on our projects and visualizing that in something like Power BI, for example, but you know, using that to help us to improve or to help us to learn about our experiences so that we can leverage that for our clients' benefit, for our own benefit, you know, for the community's benefit, whatever it might be. But you know, figuring out better ways of doing things by just using the data that we normally create and as a part of doing our work would be really important.
To add to something you said there, Bill, about not having ownership of all your information because it's spread across different sites. It's also a need and a consideration of the fact that that may be in different places, but you should keep the records that you are, you know, it's about the evidence of this may be on a site which we don't own, but we can prove we put it on there and we can prove who we sent it to. And it's capturing those records in a system that is accessible for people. So even if you don't have the data because your external CD has been switched off because the project is closed, you can still evidence what you did or didn't do through the surrounding contextual records, not necessarily the information itself.
Yeah, that's a great point, because In that example of the design build pursuit I was talking about, it was the contractor that was hosting the data on their team site. And a lot of stuff that was being created was our intellectual property. And so, we wanted to keep it. So we needed to, we needed to know what it was, where it was, and then, at the end of the pursuit, we needed to get it back. We knew, not that we took it away and the contractor no longer had access to it, but we needed to have that record of what went on in the project, because it wasn't in a location that we had control over. And so it was really important to be able to take advantage of that.
Well, I think we are just about at that hour went by pretty quickly.
It certainly did. I think we were going to cover this slide here, but I think if there's any more additional questions, I don't think there are there?
I'm trying to look through. Some great questions that have been coming in all along. Excuse me. It looks like one kind of discussed a little bit about training. Could you expand on this and describe the actual training sessions that you did using Newforma? How did you set it up and run it? Was it, us? Was it, you find that your internal champions do the training? Like how do you all set up that part?
For us, it's our internal champions, and we tend to not train on the software. We train on the process that the software is a part of. And the reason for that is because we try to get people actually using the software and an example on the process, because that's how they're going to they'll retain that knowledge a lot more than just being sort of lectured to over a half an hour or an hour period of time. But we want them to learn our process and our procedure for doing things, and the software is a part of that rather than just being focused on learning the software. But that's just one of the things we've learned from it.
I just jotted that down, train on the process.
Yeah, we go to people and do the training, but also we try to make them, we try to make the users understand why they're doing it, as well as, that you click this and you click this and you put this there. It's also to understand why we're asking them to do this and the context that these processes are in. So, why you need to file your emails and why you need to name your drawings properly and why you need to have quality requirements. So they're able to kind of put the processes in a working context rather than it just being a kind of straight, do this, do this, do that. We need to do this, do that. So they can understand really what the need is for this and what's driving it.
Yeah.
That's perfect. I think that takes us to the hour here, gentlemen.
On the dot.
On the dot, indeed. Well done, guys. So I think it just leaves us to thank you, Zach. Today you've been great. Thank you, Bill and Erik. You've been fantastic. It's been a fantastic panel discussion. Obviously, if there's any questions that anybody that attended hasn't had the chance to ask or want to ask later on, you have the chance of contacting Newforma through answers@newforma.com. So please feel free to email any questions you have or any general information you need from us. Just let us know. And yeah, thanks again. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Erik.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Perfect. Thank you, Zach, Erik, James, and Bill, and a big thank you to today's sponsor, Newforma. Everyone in the audience will receive an on-demand copy of today's session via email within the next 24 hours. And our next webinar will take place on November the 2nd with a presentation on communication trends that will make your construction projects easier. You can register for this and all of our other upcoming sessions on the Festival of BIM and Digital Construction website. We hope you enjoyed today's webinar and look forward to seeing you at the next one. Thank you, everyone, and stay safe.
Thank you.